Ladies and gentlemen, right? Welcome to the production value. I spare no expense on this, Blue. It's
Sure.
just, it's through the roof. Welcome to episode 26 of At Home with Mark. I am pumped today because we have Bleu. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, buddy.
My pleasure. Great to be
Now
here.
let me step back in time here because my first introduction to you was when I was a student at Berkeley. So this was probably 2009.
Okay.
It was Watched Pot era.
All right.
And you came to my advanced lyric writing class, to Pat's class. And you sat down, you were just talking for a little bit, and you started to talk about the Leo record. And you played, I can't remember what video you played. But anyway, no one in the class had any clue about any power pop stuff besides me. So I was like, like when you were talking, like no one in there knew who Jellyfish was. Nobody knew about like the first Alzy record or any of the great stuff that's floating out.
Really?
Yeah. So like while you were talking and everything, I was just totally sold and bought in to what you do. And then obviously listening to your music after the fact, I was just, head over heels with what you were doing from there. But so I really appreciate you making the time to chat with me and hang out.
Oh my gosh, my absolute pleasure. It's actually a much needed respite from the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how have you been doing? So like what's going on in the songwriting world? Have you just been producing and stuff still through COVID, or like what's been going on?
I've been lucky. I mean, I've been very busy. It generally is a lot of the things that I typically do. They've kind of taken some different forms, but I do some production music work, if you know what that is, and I kind of front loaded a lot of production music work at the beginning of the pandemic, thanks to a good buddy of mine who works at Universal Production Music. And that was fun. And I've continued to do some production music work, but I always do that. So I did kind of about the same amount that I do. There also were a couple of projects that either had started pre-pandemic or kind of came more to the forefront at the beginning of the pandemic that were very easy to work on and complete without having to get together with anybody. So there were some projects like that. Then there was some transitioning to some remote stuff. I worked on a single with a kind of a TikTok star named Gabriella B on a single, and I worked on the production remotely and then cut her vocal remotely. She's Canadian, fortunately, and they've done a lot better with the pandemic than we were. So she was able to get together with an engineer who she sees regularly, like with mask and social distance and whatever, but they were able and allowed to be in the same room together while I was basically producing through the engineer on the other end. So there have been a couple things like that. I have done a couple of writing sessions as well. I released a kids music record, so I took some time to kind of work on that and get that finished up, which honestly I probably wouldn't have done had it not been for the pandemic. So that was good. Worked a little bit on some of my own music, not really, but I worked on the music video that we just released.
Which I wanted to talk about because it's brilliant, man. I loved it. I watched it the other day when you dropped it. The song's great too, but like, what a cool idea! Where did that come from?
I had been talking to somebody else about a totally different idea, which I was somewhat enthusiastic about, and that I was going to try to kind of collaborate remotely with that person. But I also was a little bit overwhelmed. I actually directed and edited and did all the like special effects and animation and stuff for a couple of music videos for a friend's record during the pandemic. Actually, a great power pop record. The artist is called Taylor Locke,
Hmm.
and the record. Well, it's an EP, and there's another EP coming, and I worked on a song on this EP, and then a couple of music videos, and but one of them's for a song that's coming on the next EP. Anyway, blah blah blah. Anyway,
Hmm.
it was a lot of work, extremely time consuming and fun, and I'm super psyched with the way it came out. But I did a lot of stop motion animation, which I'm sure everybody knows is like insanely time consuming,
Hmm.
and tedious. And anyway, then this guy um, came forward. Graham is his name. If you find the video or follow any of the links, please find him because he's amazing and does a lot of music video direction amongst other things. But he came to me with this idea, and I was like, and also kind of wanted to take the reins, and that kind of thing. And I was like, great. This is. I was totally in love with the idea right from the very beginning. I could see it. I could get it, and I could tell then through us working through it that he really wanted to work on it to make it as good as it could be. And he was able to shoot it with his family, basically with his brother and his brother's wife. Um, so they didn't need to sort of like break any protocols or anything to
Hmm.
to get it shot. And I wasn't there. I didn't need to be there. He just did his thing on his own because we really had a extremely detailed sort of shot list and concept and all that kind of stuff. And it came out great. I'm really super happy with it. And I hope it's very rewatchable. There's a ton of Easter eggs. I mean, the whole video is basically one Easter egg after another.
Yep, yep. I picked up on a lot of it. So, and even like I loved the fact, and this is so you, I feel like with your music, but I love the fact when you talk about specific genres that the music changes and you don't lose the vibe of like what was originally placed in front of you, like the beginning of the song. Just how you kind of shift genre musically in the middle of a verse for like 2 bars. And then like that stuff I feel like is so you and you do it so well, especially with this track. But what really struck me is I didn't know what to expect when I first started watching it. And when I saw the title of the song on that first LP, I was like, oh, weird. That kind of looks like Blue. Like what? And then all of a sudden, like, oh, all the lyrics are on all these disc jackets. Like it's just like now I get what's going on. Like it was like it took me a quick second after the first one went by, and
Yeah,
then as it continued, I was like waiting to see what was going to pop in. So it's awesome. I'll share it all over the place after we do this because people
great.
need to see
Yeah, and every album cover has some sort of a little extra joke on it too. If people want to take the time to like find all the jokes, and that's what made it fun for me mostly. And
it.
um, I hope people get a kick out of it.
Oh, it's great, man. Is this going to be like part of a larger record that's coming?
Theoretically, I mean, I've been essentially sitting on a record or a couple of records or a few EPs or whatever for a long time, and have just been busy with other projects and making a living. As a full time musician, it's not it's not a cakewalk. It takes a lot of moving from project to project and juggling a lot of balls. Uh, that's what juggling balls looks like.
I was gonna say, I guess that's a universal sign. That's either someone who doesn't know what they're doing or someone who's damn good at
Well, I certainly don't know how to juggle,
it.
so I'm probably horribly inept. But anyway, so yeah, there is material there, and it it felt right sized. I definitely was encouraged by putting this song out and then working on the video and putting the song and the video out, so maybe it's through kind of more manageable bite-sized chunks like that I'll be able to move through releasing some of this other material. Yeah, it's been a struggle, to be honest. It's hard to find time to work on my own stuff. I was really happy to kind of dedicate the time to finishing the Jasmine and Blue record, the Turtle and the Bunny, which is the kids record. But that was a lot of just kind of like tying up loose ends and that kind of thing. And it's a little bit more daunting of a project to try to get even an EP out, unless I just, kind of plop it out there with no support or plan or anything like that, which it may come to that eventually, but
Hey man, I almost wore my I helped Blue Kickstart 4 shirt tonight, but that thing is so ragged now. I was like, that's not presentable. I can't wear that in front of him right now. So if that's something, man, I mean, I'll buy it whenever you put it out. I mean, I love your music, so I'm sure there's plenty of people who will pick it up if you're doing it independently or not.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's not even so much about finding a label. It's just that even doing the crowdsourcing thing, it's a huge amount of work, with family life and all the other kind of work obligations I have and stuff like that, it can be difficult to find the time to figure that out.
Yeah. Do you think, as a quick aside, do you think that in the current climate of the industry right now, because I mean, you're deep in the weeds in there, do you think that there's no point in releasing full, records now? Like it's doing an EP or singles is kind of more as far as keeping people's attention, like, record tunes, but put out more singles or put out, 2 EPs in a year or 3 EPs in a year. Do you think that's a way that we're going?
There's no question about it. I mean, I don't think it's a way that we're going. I think it's a way that we've already gone.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't discourage anyone who wants to put out an album from putting out an album. But in terms of emerging artists or genre artists, basically anybody who's not at the, top 0.1%. If you put out even an EP, there's really only, or typically there's only one promotional opportunity within that 5 songs or 4, whatever it's going to be. The focus is going to be on one song. So the prevailing attitude is that why would you waste even more songs? Because it's sort of considered that even the remaining songs on an EP are not doing anything.
Yeah,
are not there to generate any real attention or revenue.
Yeah.
And the market is getting so used to just the release of singles, and it's a singles mentality as well. So it takes a lot of times an extra effort even to convince on the EP side, because a lot of people are going to say, well, if you give me 10 songs, let's pick the one best one, and then we'll work on that one for a couple of months until it's ready to be the single.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to apply that mentality to an EP, you'd be needing more along the 50 to 100 songs to narrow down, Does that make sense? But
yeah.
I think that is very much the kind of the prevailing thought process now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. I put out a 8-song record last year, like a year ago, November. And even then we were kind of like, this is probably too much. Like, we probably don't need to do this. Like, financially speaking too, like investing all the time and money and paying the musicians and putting it out and whatnot. I mean, it's a great, you know how it feels. It's a great accomplishment. It's like releasing something in the world. You're just like, now it's off my chest kind of thing. But at the same time, I was like, we could have split that into 2 EPs and like fed the trough, more over the course of the year. You know what I mean?
That's how a lot of people definitely feel about it. It maximizes your, promotional opportunities, basically. But I think a lot of people who appreciate power pop music, if that's what we're talking about, appreciate the album format. But even power pop was singles driven, certainly in its infancy. So,
totally.
You know what I mean? So there's an argument to be made there as well.
Like staying authentic, to how it started almost.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's but like I say, I think it's a personal choice, and it should be a creative and artistic choice.
Yeah.
Not just a commercial choice. And that's certainly how I think about it anyway, and would encourage other people to think about it too. It's like, and also if you have some songs that don't fit, some oddball songs that aren't singles or whatever, but you want them out there, you want people to hear them. I think that's as good an argument as any to put them on an EP or an album.
No, yeah, totally. I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to what do you want to do, man? Like, it's up to you as the artist that decide what you want to do. But regardless, I got so much I want to ask you in this hour. So I usually, at the beginning of all these interviews, I usually ask people. So I have a specific moment in my life, like a lightning bolt moment, where I was playing Sega Genesis in my buddy's room playing NBA. Is it NBA Jams? Yeah. And he put on Nirvana's Nevermind, and then he put on like Pearl Jam's 10. And I was like, this is probably 1991, 92. And I was like, holy crap, I want to play guitar. Like, I want to stop being a jock. I want to pick up a guitar. I want to learn how to do that. Do you have something like that in your life? Not everybody does. It's kind of varies, but like, do you have a moment that you remember?
Absolutely. Many moments, very, and each, I think, kind of represents its own sort of mark forward. But I will say that I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a songwriter. And I was trying to write songs when I was like 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
And like I didn't even know what that meant. And I wasn't a prodigy or anything by any means, but the focus always, there was some sort of early realization that the people who sang the songs also went through this process of writing the songs, and sometimes it wasn't even the people who were singing the songs. Right. You know what I mean? That there were other people who may have written the song, and that was always a fascination to me. In that like, oh, I can write my own songs. I feel like a lot of people come to it through wanting to perform. Mm-hmm. And there was that, and typically that involves performing other people's songs, because that's what inspires you, is other people's songs, right? Mm-hmm. But it somehow did click early for me, that the idea that I wanted to create my own songs, and so that was always the focus. But I think the two biggest moments were I wrote a song for that my middle school choir performed. And my music teacher at the time, kind of helped me put it together. And I had this early crude music notation program, on my Tandy 1000 computer.
Look at you.
That's the Radio Shack computer, which most people won't remember, but that was the like Radio Shack brand of computer was called Tandy.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
1000 was their like, floppy drive. But anyway, I had this crew, and I had tried to kind of, put together this little song, and she kind of helped me figure out how it was supposed to go. And my choir ended up performing it. And it was in the program in front of not the whole school, but whoever came to the evening choir performance,
Yeah.
the auditorium kind of thing. And that set me on a course. You know what I mean? Where I never looked back from. And my parents and friends down to, obviously this choir teacher and all these people were so supportive of that. And that made a huge difference in my life. And then I've told this story many times, so I apologize if anybody's heard it before, but when I was in high school, or early in high school, maybe it would have been freshman or sophomore year, I can't remember, I went to go see Poison, and Warrant was opening up. And I had a totally clear epiphany moment. And the only way I can describe it is not that I'm a big God guy, but this is what it felt like. It felt real in the moment. The top of the auditorium like opened up, and like a light, like the light of God, like the heavens opened up, and this beam shone down on me. you know the image, the clouds
Oh
parted,
yeah.
the voice of God spoke to me and said, if these jokers can do it, so can you.
That's so great. And so you were a freshman or a sophomore in high school?
Freshman or a sophomore in high school. So, but I'd already been writing songs and like playing in bands and stuff like that. But there was something about seeing that concert, and that's not to in any way diminish Poison, because I loved the concert. I still like Poison. I still listen to them and think about them and appreciate their catalog and so on and so forth. But there was something about that concert where it clicked, and I felt like it was achievable.
Okay.
Like I could do what they do. Maybe not now, but I can get there.
So at that time, well, first of all, what was your first band's name? Do you remember the first band you were in? I love those.
We had a million names. But one of them, like, we were always changing our name, like every week.
Of course.
But one of them was As If, but yeah, which is so dumb. But
that's great.
What was another one? There was something about an elevator or something like that. I can't remember. But I moved to Bethesda, Maryland, my senior year of high school, because my mom moved, and I went to go live with my mom.
Really? I'm from Baltimore. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda, Maryland, my senior year of high school, before I went to Berkeley.
Okay.
College music. And my band that year was called this was the whole gag. Our band was called THC.
Okay.
Even though I had never smoked weed like before we started the band, but one of the guys in the band smoked weed, and it was his idea, and it seemed like subversive and cool. But because we couldn't do anything like with that name, we couldn't like play any high school functions or like all ages shows or anything with that name. We would always change the name to be an acronym of THC, like for every show. So it was like the human condition, or so on and so forth. But anyway, I actually thought that was not the THC part, but the changing of the name, for every show with the same acronym, it was kind of clever, I thought, and kind of fun.
Oh yeah, dude, I love it. My older brother was always like, I don't know why you don't take my advice with band names, because I really think you should call your band your mom's boyfriend. So that way, when people say, "Oh, who are you going to see tonight?" He's like, "Your mom's boyfriend," and I'm like, "What? Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I get the joke, but where is the joke?" And it's just like, you can
He's
name
100% right. He's
what?
totally right.
Yeah,
He's absolutely 100% right. I agree. That is what you're being called.
it should be, but
Or
I never went.
Or you should start a band so that you can call it that.
Right.
And there's no shame in that at all. Start a project based entirely on the name.
On the name of the band.
Absolutely. That is a valid career path.
And then if we do cover gigs, we can just play one song. We can just play Stacy's mom. The whole gig. Just repeat it all night. So when you end up going to Mass and going to Berkeley, so did you just stay in Massachusetts? What's the Massachusetts background? Because you were in Mass for a while, right?
Well, I went to Berkeley. I was pretty young. I was 17 when I started Berkeley, and I was 20 when I graduated, because I went the summer semesters. So I went straight through. So I wasn't even 21 when I graduated.
Okay.
And I worked for the college for about a year and a half before I went on and did the other things that I was doing in Boston. But my one and only goal while I was towards the end of my Berkeley time, and then for the several years afterwards, was to have a successful band and get signed. Get signed. And so and Boston was where I was, and Boston is where I worked towards that goal. So that's what, and then I ended up buying a house after I got my record deal and my publishing deal and all that. And that, so because of that, I had roots there, but also I had friends there. And my best friend, who I connected with after college, Ducky Carlisle, had a recording studio there that I initially recorded at, my first independent albums. And then when I got signed, I insisted that he kind of come along with me, and we worked on the major label record there. Not the major labels, but my major label record. Major Labels, by the way, is the name of a band that I was in briefly.
I was gonna bring that up. I was like, we can do with another record from that band.
Oh yeah, we're just trying to get the first one officially released, and
Right.
I do think it's going to come out next year on vinyl, hopefully via the label that puts out all of Mike Viola's records now, as well as great Boston band called Sparks, and they put out Van Dyke Parks. Sorry, not Sparks. Parks is the name of the band. And confusingly, this label also puts out Van Dyke Parks records, and they have some. It's an interesting, quirky, sort of somewhat power pop focused label, but called Grand Phony. Look them up; they're great. But yeah. Anyway, so I put down roots there, and I was there for a long. I had people there, and I loved it, and I still love it. And I still love going there and spending time there. 2020 will be the first year since 1996 that I have not been to Boston.
Wow.
So, and spent significant time there, spent over 5 weeks, in Boston. So that's, depressing. And really only because of the pandemic. Otherwise, I absolutely would have been there.
Yeah. So was Red the first major label record?
Redhead, yeah, exactly.
Redhead, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. So did you Were you still in Boston during that, or did you go to LA? Okay. Oh, what? So you were touring out of that was your hub. The East Coast, Northeast was your hub. Okay. Cool. So then when you were touring that record, was Ducky in the band when you guys were touring, or was he just working on the records with you?
No, initially I had a drummer that I had actually met at Berkeley in the dorms, named Dustin Hanks, who is no longer with us, unfortunately. But he was the drummer who played on not all, but most of the Redhead record. But then he actually left before we really started heavily touring the record. And kind of even towards the tail end of the making of the record, he left to join a great Boston band called Damone. And if you're into, they were kind of like cock rock, but very poppy, really, really great. I highly recommend anybody who's into like the Marvelous Three, or really any kind of rock. It's just brilliant pop rock. But anyway, he left to join that band, and that was a whole saga in and of itself. But then a guy named Dylan Halsey stepped in, did end up playing a couple of songs on the Redhead. There were two versions, but he ended up playing some songs on the second version. That was the sort of upstream to Columbia Sony, and he did most of the touring at that time with us.
Okay.
Yeah,
man, that must have been a really fun period of time of growth and just developing like your craft and everything. Because if you look at each record, like the discography as we go through the years, because 4 is one of my favorite records, man. Like if I had to be on an island, I could only take 10 records with me. That would be one of the records I would take.
Wow, that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Like I think what it is about what you do, and like this is the thing, going back to sitting in Pat's classroom and having you sit down, and I think it was Goodbye Innocence that you had the video for, and the whole time I'm sitting there like these George Harrison-y, like, you know, slide guitar parts and all this great stuff, and like and everyone else was like like, and then I remember talking to you afterwards for a second, and because I think you mentioned Jellyfish, and I was like, dude, because Spilt Milk like saved my life one summer. A good friend of mine who was in my band, like at the time I was in a jam band, and I was just like doing that thing forever. And I started like being disinterested in it because I didn't feel like there was enough substance, and I wanted to start writing more with the larger palette. And I was already a big Beatles head, and I was like, I need to go into that school and learn more about that craft. And I had a really terrible breakup with a girlfriend, and the guy in my band was like, let's listen to this record. We're just going to go for a ride. And he put that on. And from the first note of that record, I was just like, okay, like now I know what I need to do. I need to like learn how to do this stuff. And I need to understand to make myself a better player. And I'm not there now. The records I release, I play a lot in open tunings. I play a lot of slide guitar. It's all blues based stuff. So it's not pop rock in any sense, but that's my favorite type of music. But like just hearing, you know, joining a fan club for the first time, like I wish I could go back in time and hear that song for the first time again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there was so much going on in that song, and being a student of music and somebody that works really hard on facility on guitar, and, you know, the songwriting chops, the vocals, like everything about that record. Like, when was the first time you heard that album, and what was your experience with it?
I remember going to the store to get it, and I actually don't have a super great like memory in general, which I sort of like let go, and you know, as best I can, I sort of try to focus on the moment and the task at hand when possible. But I remember going to Strawberries, which. Do you even know what that is?
No, but there's an accent there that sounded kind of New England-y. So
I didn't even mean for that to happen. But Strawberries was a Tower Records like competitor.
Oh, I did not know that. Never heard of that place.
Basically, just like Tower Records, except it was called Strawberries. Anyway, if the reason why I said it so emphatically is because there might be some people might remember that place and have fond memories, or just if they remember it at all, they may remember a different time in this world when things like existed. But anyway, when there could be not only a Tower Records but a competitor to Tower Records,
right?
there were several, of which they were just one. But anyway, yeah, I remember being excited because I was already a big fan of the first record. Because some people are backwards discovering or whatever, but I kind of discovered them in real time, as the two releases were happening. And I went out and bought it like the first day it was available. And I mean, I put that song on and I was like, this is obviously all I'm going to be listening to for the rest of my life. It really felt like I'm like, this is completely impossible.
Mm-hmm.
That this level of artistry and attention to detail has been created, and that speaks to me and fires every synapse and emotion, and because it's such a ride. And so am I getting the impression that you came to that song like that was the first time you ever heard that?
I didn't hear Belly Button first. I heard Spilt Milk.
There was an expectation already. Yeah. I already loved the band. Loved them. And then so my expectations were, super high. and we're still so exceeded. I was just like, it felt magical. It really, it did feel magical. And there's very few times when you're going to hear a piece of music and it's going to do that to you, it can only happen a handful of times in your life. And I think it's wonderful to be able to reminisce and talk about those things, because it's transcendental. The only thing I can say about it.
I mean, as far as like entering into the power pop world, and that's one of the first things that I'm exposed to, you know what I mean? Like I was totally floored. And then he put on the Owsley record after that. And I was like, where have I been, man? Like under a rock listening to Fish. You know what I mean? Like,
Fish.
Yeah, I know. And I still love Fish. I have a soft spot in my heart for Fish and whatever. But like, man, there's something about, and that's why I was like, I wish someone could wipe my memory. Like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Wipe my memory. Like, I'm going to randomly walk upstairs and see this record that my wife was so cool and got me a copy of Spilt Milk on vinyl for my birthday one year. Even though she's not a huge fan, she knows I love them. So she got me it. But if I could be like, what is this? This is a crazy cover, put it on. And it would blow my mind all over again. Like it. And that Owsley record too did the same thing for me, man. Like, Oh No, the Radio, which I know you redid, which is awesome. But like that, talk about, I miss that dude. I wish we could hear some more music from that guy, because that whole scene, man, just like those two records alone, like just having that thrown at me in one evening, Blue, one evening in a car. I was just like, okay, I need to go buy these like now. Like, can we go to Record and Tape Traders and so I can buy these two albums? And then you get to work with Roger. Like, how did that happen?
Well, and I worked with Andy too. I worked with Andy.
Oh yeah, on LEO, yeah,
and on the Redhead record. I mean, he was kind of the hidden magic sauce on Redhead, especially as it pertained to being a whole album. and he even has a little cameo on the one, half-assed radio single that we had. But yeah, I mean, it was an absolute dream come true. When the producer, John Fields, unbelievably talented guy all the way around, and who ended up becoming a good friend over the years. At some point he said to me, "Hey, like, who would you want to work with on this record? Obviously, I have my people that I think you would be great with to do such and such, but who would you most want to work with? Maybe I can try to connect you with them." And without even hesitating, Andy Sturmer was the first person that I said, and he was able to make that connection happen. And we ended up becoming friends for a brief period of time and working on that record together. And it was just, it was a dream come true. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It was like he was the absolute tippy top number one person that I wanted to work with, and I was able to work with him, and it was a great experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, and now I've become friends with Roger over the years, and he is just incredibly fascinating person, and beyond the musical witchery, which kind of goes without saying. He's on a whole other level in so many ways, but just getting to know him, and he's a wonderfully interesting conversationalist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been great just to get to know him over the years.
Did you learn a lot of the stuff that you implement production wise from those cats? Like, do you feel like you kind of pulled some inspiration and some knowledge from those guys working with them through the years, and as far as like how you produce your records?
No question about it. Yeah. Credit where credit is due. Certainly John Fields was a huge piece of that puzzle in terms of active mentorship, as well as my best buddy, Ducky Carlisle, who, we remained friends and continue to be collaborators throughout the years. But it was a lot of people. I mean, I've always been hungry, for knowledge and information, and am always excited to kind of share information and knowledge and swap stories and tricks. And if a lot of times we call them tricks, I guess they're not really tricks, but sort of like magicians or something like that. There is sort of that aspect of it, that it's kind of a brotherhood, and you're sharing, this magical knowledge.
It's like the smoke and mirrors with reamping a snare drum sound and stuff like that. It's that stuff to me is super interesting. But then speaking of snare drum sounds, I always love how drums are recorded on your records. There's something about the snare attack and the compression that you use on your tunes. And it's like, you can tell that you tweak it, whatever the song is, to like appropriately support the song. But like, how do you, when you're working on recording records, like, do you go in and think about like this song, like Singing in Tongues? Like, I love the way that whole song sounds. There's just something about every little sonic piece, and like finally now listening to stuff in headphones, like the older I get, the more I appreciate that stuff, because it's the time that you put in to be like, let's separate these things a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. Let's keep this thing in the middle. Like, do you go in with an idea of how you want to do it, or is it spontaneous and it develops while you're working on it?
It's both, and I think both are kind of totally valid. But, I'm pretty particular. The right way of saying it.
That's fine. It's worth it. It comes out great. So like, talk a little bit about it, because I'm like a novice production dude. Like I have starting to get into understanding plugins and better microphones and things like preamps and like that. Like talk a little bit about that process. I'm so interested in how you do that when you're working on your music.
I have always had, much to my detriment, a sort of a singular focus on a song. So I'm very rarely, so I only look at recording and production through the eyes of a single song. And you know, so as a result, a lot of my albums can feel disjointed, schizophrenic, whatever you want to call it. And now I embrace that more, and I'm not kind of embarrassed or worried about it. It's part of who I am, and as you'll see with a song like I Want to Write You a Symphony, but not exclusive to that song, I just let not just the song speak, but every moment in the song sort of speak. I'm very focused on prosody and the concept of prosody, and how that carries through production and not just songwriting. And in, you know, some of the more ambitious productions that I've done for other people, a lot of that stuff shines through. You know, when I'm working with other artists as a producer, I'm able to have more focus on their overall sound. And that's really my job more, is to help them to hone in on what makes them them, and also create, hopefully, a marketable product over the course of a body of material, and not just a single. But certainly for my stuff, it is the hyper focus through the lens of just the song, and everything is song down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Typically, not exclusively. There are exceptions. You Catch More Flies with Honey Than Vinegar is certainly one. You know, where they were built production up, but typically I'm going song. You know, I'm a song forward thinker, because that's, you know, where a lot of my interest and passion lies. I don't know, that's kind of broad strokes. If you want to get into more of the like specific geekery.
Hey man, we can geek. I'm all about geeking. I mean, I think what really, and I don't think things feel, you know, schizophrenic. Just, you know, I don't know if that's like just in your own head, but like I kind of
all schizophrenia is just in your own head.
That is true. That is true. But what I'm saying is, for your albums, from song to song, how you were saying it, just like it seems so disjointed. I don't feel that way when I listen to them. I feel like when I'm listening to your records, I kind of crave there be differences and nuances from song to song. I don't want to listen to something that sounds the same all the way through. And I don't mean that just by like, you know, the genre of the musician or the artist. Like, you know, right. is this noodly song to next noodly song to next noodly song? I don't even mean that, or even like a slow tempo to a fast tempo. I mean, I want some texture from song to song. And, you know, I don't expect artists to play live when we can do that again and reproduce exactly how their record sounds. That's not what a record's for. A record is to explore, you know, what you hear in your head. And like we've always learned, and just what I've learned from like Pat Pattison is like, if you don't get goosebumps from hearing a song, and if it's just a piano and a voice or a guitar and a voice, it's not a song yet, you know? And I live my life by that creed now. If it's not an actual song, it doesn't feel that way when I'm playing it, or if someone's hearing it. Like I play a new song for my wife, if she's like, then I'm like, okay, back to the drawing board, you know? Because you can't save it with a snare sound. Like that's not going to save the tune. So like you can get as geeky as you want to, because I am really curious about like how you compress stuff and like plugins you use and preamps you use, because it's so, everything is, this is lame, but everything's so warm yet crispy, and everything's separated where I can hear everything sonically. And you have, sometimes when you're tracking, like you've got a lot. It's not like you just have like a guitar, bass, drums, and a vocal. Like you got a lot going on. So how do you spread that so you can hear everything that well?
Very carefully. And it takes a lot of, I will say I'm actually much less focused on that than I was in the past. I'd say I'm more focused on the energy and the feeling than I am the, absolute clear separation and that kind of thing. But I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. One of the most helpful concepts that was ever introduced to me by Ducky Carlisle, although I know he attributes it to somebody else, and I can't remember who that person is. But I remember hearing it from Ducky Carlisle, and I know this is a big kind of concept for him. There's only 100% of anything related to a song. So if you imagine, and obviously it's a lot more complicated than just the pie chart of volume or the pie chart of panning or the pie chart of EQ or the pie chart of, space in terms of, reverbs and rooms and that kind of thing. But let's just take volume, for instance, because I think it's an easy concept to grasp. The moment you turn something up, there's still only 100%. So in reality, what that means is that you're actually turning everything else down. Mm-hmm. You can't continually just keep turning
stuff up.
Yeah, and I think once you kind of can internalize that concept and carry that over to all of the aspects in a production and a mix, then I think you can start to have something that can be fairly dense and still clear. I will say, in terms of being able to hear everything and find its space in a production and a mix, that honestly is the easy part. The hard part is making it something that has life and impact and hopefully, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. And hopefully can elicit emotion. Just being able to hear everything is the, I think is kind of the baseline, or sometimes can even be distracting from what the goal should be.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to talk about it on a philosophical kind of a idea rather than getting into the nitty gritty, because that's
here's these wave plugins I use.
Yeah, probably only going to be interesting to. I mean, I don't even know who's watching this anyway, but that might be something we can do off chain, but probably isn't going to be super interesting to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's fascinating because I never really understood compression.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure I understand it now.
Well, it's weird because like as a slide guitarist, I've learned that can help a lot. Look at whatever Rycooter or like Bonnie Raitt, like you can Bonnie Raitt's tone is so squashed, you can hear it. Like you can hear that limiter and the compressor on her tone. But like for me, for production wise, you're familiar, I'm gathering, with Wolfpack?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that Wolf compressor that they put out,
Sure. I don't use it enough. For some reason the filter has become like a go-to for me because it's the very first filter I found that doesn't have any artifacts. And for some reason all the other ones seem to. And it's very pleasant. But anyway, I have the compressor and I have used it a few times, and you're actually kind of reminding me I need to like put that in my favorites so I can keep going to, because when I do use it, yeah, it's great.
It's just like sounds good on every damn thing. Like every time I do like a demo to shoot to my band, I'm like, oh, that sounds good on the acoustic. What does it sound like on the bass? Oh my God, that sounds so much better.
There's something there's something happening under the hood that's some sort of mojo. It's not just it's not just compressing. It's somehow otherwise coloring the sound on some sort of a sliding scale that always seems to make things sound better, even when they're extremely or very. Actually, especially when they're extremely compressed. It does that very well, and I think that was kind of the
seems like the point, of the whole thing.
Yeah, was to be able to really compress things extremely and still have that work somehow.
It's like putting 16 wallets on your snare drum and hitting it. It's just that thing where it's like whap. You know what I mean? There's something so magical about that. That's also too what I was saying about the snare sounds on your records that I love so much, because that really dry, like, attack on a snare drum. Like I grew up on all the 90s crap. So if you listen to like some Soundgarden stuff for 311, like you hear a ring in that snare drum all over the place. And now I'm like, I grew up thinking that's how snares are supposed to sound. And I'm like, well, I guess they can sound that way if you want that effect. But like, I've realized that I'm kind of backpedaling more into that sound, and like that vintage Motown snare drum sound as well is just where my heart lies. So like, I appreciate, I guess, I don't know if you think about this stuff as an artist, but like there's people out here like nerds like me who not only listen to your music because I like the music, but listening to it because I'm like a fan of how you do the music, like how you record it and capture it,
Well, and again, credit where credit's due. I can't take full responsibility or credit for all that stuff. There's almost always other people working to make those things happen and be the best that they can be, including in many cases Ducky Carlisle, as well as a huge cadre of incredible drummers. I know and have worked with so many unbelievable drummers over the years, and you cannot take that out of the equation.
Yeah.
Michael Bland, who some people may know, he started out with Prince's New Power Generation, is an unbelievable multi-instrumentalist and producer in his own right. He's played with a bunch of bands, including Soul Asylum, who he's been with and worked with for many years. When that guy hits the snare drum, you don't need to do anything to it. You can do stuff to it, but it's essentially impossible to fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same reason I like cooking, fish heads and fish collars. You can't mess them up. Right. They're totally forgiving, and they're delicious every time,
Right.
I think I might have just said that Michael Bland is like a fish head, which is not at all what I was meaning to say. I really like fish heads and fish collars, but actually it's occurring to me that most people don't and think that that's a gross thing. So rewind.
I used to be a fish head, like I was saying earlier in my life. Dad jokes, dad jokes, dad jokes. Hey, I would be remiss. I know we're running out of time here, but I would be remiss if I did not tell you. So we talked before. You're a dad. I'm a dad. My daughter loved Tinkerbell and the Never Beast. And
great.
man, it's so funny because we've probably watched that movie 50 times, 60 times. I don't know, man. But what's really funny,
not quite old enough yet to like be able to handle TV, so we haven't been able to get into it yet.
Oh man, she absolutely loved that movie. And what's funny is the end of the movie in the credits. What was the one track, 1,000 Years?
Yeah.
Okay. So I heard you start singing, and I was like, "What? That's Blue." And like I remember my wife was sitting there. She's like, "What?" I was like, "Do you remember I was telling you about that guy that came to Berkeley and in our class and we're talking about jellyfish and blah blah blah?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "That's him." And then I saw the credits of your name listed and everything in the music, and I was like, "Holy crap!" No wonder I loved all the music in this movie so much. And talk about, like, that's the cool thing about being a parent now these days is like you writing music for a movie like that like, first of all, is a gorgeous movie. It's such a great like message, and like I teared up. I mean, it's a great movie. But then to like have music that like we all like enjoyed. Like I bought that record, we listened to it in my car all the time. We still listen to Strange Sight like all the time, man. Like we'll have dance parties in the house, like we're cooking dinner listening to that track. But
I did not write Strange Sight.
Well, did KT write that song, or did you?
No, that was actually written by a guy named Rob Cantor. I did produce Strange Sight, so I produced all the songs in the film.
And then you did a lot. You do a lot of the sound design.
The opening song "Float,"
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote the end credits song "1,000 Years," and then meaning not me, but the team over at Disney roped in KT Tunstall, who I was already a really big fan of, and so very, very excited to work with her. But all the songs were already written and demoed out, and for the most part, mostly produced before KT even came on to the project.
Man.
And then got to work with her on it, which was amazing. She's just a huge talent and had just such a richness, character, and it was a bold choice, and for a Disney film, and I really appreciate that they went that way with it, because she's a really like mature isn't the right word, but she's a very just a fully formed artist, whose experience really and depth really shines through her voice, as well as her songwriting, obviously, and her artistry and all that stuff as well. But yeah, it was an amazing project to work on, and I'm so grateful, that, and I do think it's a great movie, and that people should check it out if they haven't. And I think the music is really great, and I hope not what people would be expecting typically from that type of movie.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. I mean, it's the whole ending scene. I don't want to ruin anything, but when they take excerpts of that song and they slow it down, and it's like half tempo and really melodramatic and stuff. Like we all on the couch, like, oh, it's just like such a great.
That was me and my buddy Joe. It's all just vocals, with some very slight, sort of sub bass or something kind of supporting it. But yeah, that was all just vocals that me and a buddy of mine worked so hard on, just really trying to wring the emotion out of it, and also we did it in such a way that like it couldn't all be tuned perfectly and stuff like that. Like we wanted to get it, so we all sang together
Nice.
So that you get that realness of the voices resonating, together in real time and that kind of thing. It was. I have so many fond memories. A lot of very stressful memories too from working.
Working on a Disney project, I'm sure it's stressful.
Yeah. Absolutely. But a lot of really great fond memories as well.
Well, it's
but
awesome.
I'm so glad that you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that I'll get to enjoy that with my son when he's the right age as well.
Yeah, we're gonna have to watch it again. Now that we were talking about it, like it's been a couple years since we've watched it. It's probably time to pull that sucker back out. It's so great. All right, so at the end of these interviews, I think I told you I do this lightning round get down. So it's 10 quick questions. It's goofy. It's goofy questions. Just a little bit of goof funness to end the interview here. And what I'll do here is I'll pop on a little metronome for a little suspense. You don't have to be scared. It's all in good fun. Okay. Told you, production quality of this show is through the roof.
I mean, better than I'm doing.
If Netflix, dude, I had this whole idea that I wish I could do this show for Netflix and do it in a barn and fly in the artist and like have this interview, and then afterwards, like my band be the backing band for that artist to play their music.
Great.
Dope.
I love
so
it.
Dope, right? All right. So the first question is always the same. You can, if you want, you can explain your answers. You don't have to. You can just burn right through them if you want. But if you'd like to, I'm happy to hear your explanation.
Okay.
Lennon or McCartney?
I mean, McCartney, obviously, but I'd rather do like Beatles, Stones, or something. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to have to like that's you don't want to have to diss Lennon either.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge McCartney fan.
McCartney, Lennon, and then everybody else.
Dude, are you a huge? I love Wings. Are you a huge Wings fan too?
I wouldn't say I'm like a diehard fan or whatever, but I love everything McCartney.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm not like an obsessive who like knows every detail of every
right
record or whatever. But yes, of course, I love Wings. They're fucking amazing. You can bleep that out later.
All right, next one: Step Brothers or Talladega Nights?
I gotta go Talladega Nights.
All right.
I love both of them.
Me too.
And I may or may not have been to the Catalina wine mixer.
Yes. Well, then we have to. You might have to change it, Step Brothers, because if you've been to that, man. No, we'll stay. We'll stay with the little rabbit riding around the track, pooping out other little rabbits. We'll stay with that. All right, mozzarella sticks or onion rings?
Oh, I'm gonna go good onion rings, but they have to be the kind where the batter and the onion never separate from bite to bite.
Ooh, I'm feeling you there.
That's like 1 out of 500.
Right. The perfect plate of onion rings would be that for sure. I can see that. All right. If you have your choice, do you like to co-write with other people or do you like to write by yourself, write solo?
Co-write, definitely. All about it.
All right, cool. Boston or LA?
I'm gonna go Boston, but very happy in LA as well.
Right on. All right, here's the tough one. So joining a fan club or Killer Queen?
Joining a fan club.
Me too. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really hard one.
Yeah. All right.
It's just me not taking into account, music history and.
Right. Well, yeah, it's just about what you dig. That's all this is about.
Yeah, but I dig both of those the most.
Yeah, the mostest. All right. Die Hard. Is it a Christmas movie or is it not a Christmas movie?
100%. There is no question that is a Christmas movie. One of the greatest Christmas movies that I finally got my wife to watch last year, and she actually liked it, and actually wants to watch it again this Christmas.
Yes.
For that reason alone, it's a Christmas movie, because that is a Christmas miracle.
I was gonna say, can you guys come to my house and knock on my door and tell my wife that? Because maybe then she'll accept that fate. Because I've been trying to explain to her, but she's just like, nah. So I think it is too. All right. Sure. What do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy getting in front of a mic and singing, or do you enjoy playing guitar?
I don't enjoy either of those things.
If you had to be on a gig and they were like, you either have to just sing or you just have to play the tunes.
I'm not going to take either of those gigs.
Okay.
I'm out.
All right. Etta James or Nina Simone?
I'd probably go Etta James, but that's pretty Lennon and McCartney level too. You know, not fair that you'd have to choose between the two.
Kuna Matata, man.
But you know, Nina Simone, you get more the kind of like songwriting side, whereas Etta James, I mean, not that the songs aren't great, but you know, there's maybe sometimes there's you know, some more personal connection. That's not true either. Jeez, that's a tough one.
These are all supposed to be kind of tough. Now, this last one you're probably going to smack me for too, but like I thought I could ask you Belly Button or you know, Spilt Milk, but I thought, nah, that's too easy. I don't want to do that. I want to do Sgt. Pepper's or Abbey Road. Which one would you rather have on the turntable?
Abbey Road.
Okay. Why? I'm curious. So those two records are obviously seminal records for a lot of people when they're into the Beatles. Why Abbey Road?
It speaks to me, you know, like more consistently, like the more of it speaks to me more consistently over time. You know, and just like anything else, like, you know, it's a piece of art. So it's beyond just like pure analyzation. I came to Sgt. Pepper first, so that'll always like be an entry point and you know, have a special place in my heart. But Abbey Road, I feel like Sgt. Pepper is more like sort of the exciting thing about it is its novelty and its level of experimentation mixed with the artistry. Whereas by the time you get to Abbey Road, it's a little bit more in service of the song and the emotion and the than the experimentation and the innovation. Yeah, so
yeah, that's fair. No, I like so Abbey Road for me is like definitely the more raw, like unadulterated like songwriting. Like I totally feel that about that record too. Did you see that complete Beatles documentary? I'm sure you've seen that.
The one that came out like 15 years ago or more
than that. So like I was in middle school when I first saw it. My uncle had it on like Laserdisc or something.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I have seen it, but I don't think I've seen it since then.
Oh, man, Malcolm McDowell narrates it. It's so good.
Oh no, I'm fully familiar with it. It was the anthology. It came out at the same time as the anthology, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it predates the anthology period. By the way, Free as a Bird, that's one of my all-time favorite Beatles tracks. Oh my God.
I had a huge argument with somebody about that recently. Somebody who was a purported Jeff Lynne fan, but who didn't like his messing around with the Beatles.
Oh man, it's so good, dude. Like, ain't that song will bring me to like an emotional place too, man. Just hearing George play the slide on that song is enough for me. I'm like done. Like,
Yeah.
so, woo. All right. Well, thank you so much, Blue. I really appreciate you making the time, man.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I super appreciate it. And then, I guess, I hope to see some more music come out. I'm gonna share the new single and the video and social media. People need to check it out. It's so fun. It's like, and like you said, man, like you hope that's a rewatch. Oh, for sure. Now I'm gonna go back in and see if I can find all the little stuff I didn't see before.
There's a lot of fun stuff in there. At some point, I'm going to start doing Instagrams of all the album covers, so you don't have to like try to pause and look at the out of focus, image as it goes by in the video, because there's a lot of goofy, fun stuff in there.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna see if I can watch it again tonight and see if I can pick up on many stuff. But you guys, thanks for hanging out. A bunch of people were hanging out here. This will live in perpetuity on my YouTube channel. So like I got a bunch of great guests coming up. There's only a couple more this year. I'm gonna take a little break. But man, this has been 26, Blue. Like this is I didn't think this was gonna turn into anything. I was gonna do one a month, and it turned into like 2 a week since August.
That's so great, man. Congrats.
It's so fun, man. It's just like, in the absence of playing gigs, this is awesome. So,
well,
but anyway,
I hope you keep doing it.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. But thank you again. And you guys, we'll see you next time. Take care of each other. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Peace out.
I'll play this out.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Turn this on.
Yeah, but